All right, this is my fourth time trying to start this video because my cat wants to play and she keeps bringing me toys.
CGQ plus.
So I had this idea after I made the last PC Engine pickups video, and then I could swear somebody left a comment under that video basically saying the same thing, but when I went to go look for it to like give the person credit, I couldn't find it, but I'm probably just stupid. But the thing with pickups videos, remember I was saying last time how I'm not really a fan of pickups videos, but the thing is like I like talking about video games, right? It's why I have a show. And, if I'm excited enough about some games to go on eBay and pay like the current market rate for them, then I'm probably excited enough about them to talk about them. But instead of doing that, because I don't want to keep buying video games, why can't I just grab a few games off the shelf and talk about those instead? And so that's what we're going to do. I was kind of thinking this could be like a new series for this channel. But I mean, we'll see. I was trying to think of like a name for it, but the only thing I came up with sounded kind of pretentious, so I didn't want to do that. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. So the point is, I've got 3 games here to talk about. I had 5, but I'm kind of trying to shorten the length of my videos because like my videos are long enough that if, I wasn't me and I was just subscribed to my channel, maybe sometimes I wouldn't watch my videos because they're too long. So if I can try to keep them a little bit shorter, I just think that would be better. So instead of 5 games, we just have 3 games. And in this case, the 3 games don't really have anything to do with each other, but maybe in the future I could try to stick to some kind of theme, but it doesn't really matter. But anyway, so we're just going to talk about these 3 games sort of like as if it were a pickups video, I guess. Not really, but yeah, anyway, whatever. So the first game I've got here, I talked about the Game Boy when we got to that point in Flashback, and I pretty much covered all the games that I had. I think this is the one game that I didn't really talk about, and part of the reason for that is that I can't remember where I got it, which is weird because usually I have a good memory for this kind of stuff. When I think about, or when I look at this game, rather, I think about my grandma. I have like an association there, so maybe she got it for me somehow. Maybe we went to the store and I picked it out. I just don't remember. The camera's not going to focus because I can't figure out how to use this thing, but the game is Gargoyle's Quest. And, I mentioned one time that I felt like, I had better luck with Game Boy games than I had with NES games. NES games, I always ended up picking games that I didn't like. But somehow with the Game Boy, it seems like most of the games I had, which still wasn't really that many, but most of the games I had, I thought were pretty good. And maybe aside from Tetris, this might have been the best Game Boy game that I had. So to kind of describe Gargoyle's Quest a little bit, it's, for anybody that doesn't know, it's sort of an offshoot of the Ghosts and Goblins series. So the protagonist of Gargoyle's Quest is a gargoyle, obviously, named Firebrand, that apparently is supposed to either be the Red Devil from Ghosts and Goblins or like a relative or something. I don't really know. I don't really understand why they felt the need to even associate this game with Ghosts and Goblins, except just maybe to try to sell copies. I think when I was a kid, I didn't even know that association was there, which is funny because right on the title screen of that game, it says like Gargoyle's Quest, and then underneath it, it says Ghosts and Goblins. But I don't recall ever putting like 2 and 2 together or whatever. But to describe the game a little bit, so, it's at its core, really, it's a side-scrolling action game. It's got sort of like some RPG elements to the game. So like when the game starts, it's like this overhead view of you like talking to these people that are coming to tell you about like these horrible things that happened in the ghoul realm, which is where you live. And then you walk out of that area, and as soon as you walk out of that area, it's like, here's basically level 1 of this side-scrolling action game. But then when you get to the end of that level and beat the boss, it flips back to being this overhead RPG style perspective, and you're walking around on like an overhead map and getting into random battles with people and like going into town. But then you just end up going to like level 2, which is just more side scrolling. So like you go to the first town, and there's this guy called, I don't know if his name is Jark or if that's like his job title, I don't remember, but you go in there to talk to him, and he's telling you like, oh, my powers are diminished because I don't have my goblin stick. So can you go get my goblin stick? And so, okay, yeah, fine. And so you leave and you go find this tower he tells you to go into. And when you go into the tower, it goes back to being a side-scrolling action game. And at the end of the level, you get the goblin stick, and you go and you give it back to that Jark dude. Baron Jark, was that his name? I don't remember. And then everything's awesome, and he gives you some, ability or whatever. But it does have a little bit, people would say that these are like RPG elements because you kind of can like level up your character, not literally level up. But to talk about that, we have to talk about the side-scrolling action portion of the game, which is really the whole meat and potatoes of the game. So again, you are Firebrand. You're very much like the Red Devil in Ghosts and Goblins. So you as a normal like action platformer, like you can walk and you can jump, but like you can also stick to walls because I guess you have like claws. But sort of the main like gameplay hook of this game is that if you jump while you're in midair, if you hit the jump button again, you like float or levitate or whatever you want to call it. And as soon as you start like levitating, there's like a bar that starts to go down. And once it gets to the end, you like fall out of the sky or fall out of the air or whatever, because you can only levitate for a certain amount of time. It's called wing. Like that's your wing power. And like that's one of the things that you level up, if you will, is that bar will get longer and longer so that you can levitate for more and more time. And then the other thing that you can upgrade, or another thing that you can upgrade, is how high you can jump. So like when you go talk to that Jark dude, he gives you like the fingernail of the Spectre or something like that, that lets you jump higher. And like you have to have that to move forward in the game. So like he'll tell you, oh, go get my goblin stick. But to get the goblin stick, you have to cross this bridge where you can't even jump up onto the bridge if you don't have the ability to jump higher. And so that way you would know, okay, I can't get past this area. I must have missed something. And then you'll figure it out or whatever. Other than that, like I don't know if you're breathing fireballs. I'm not really clear on what that is, but you have some sort of projectile weapon that you use to kill enemies and whatnot. But just the platforming is very unique, I would say, to that game. Just because of the levitating thing kind of allows for like some different platforming situations, especially the levitating plus being able to stick to the side of anything, or I guess more appropriately grab the side of anything, just makes the gameplay unique compared to other side-scrolling action games. It's got very good graphics. I want to say the game came out in like 1990. I think I should have looked it up. Actually, I did look it up, but it was a long time ago. But it's a pretty early Game Boy game, and the graphics are really good. And as you'd probably expect from a Capcom game, the music is really good. And so, like, at this time when I had games like, Tetris is awesome, but you have to admit it's not exactly taxing on the hardware. Other games that I had were like Solar Striker, which was a very early game, very rudimentary audio visuals. Super Mario Land, which is a game that I absolutely love, but, we have to admit that, again, the audio visuals are not a standout feature. Bugs Bunny, Crazy Castle, kind of the same thing. But, I got Gargoyle's Quest, and it was like, wow, this game looks really, really good. Even I think playing it today, you have to kind of admit that, like, for a Game Boy game, this game looks and sounds, because sound effects too, music and sound effects are both really nice, along with the graphics. So it really kind of felt, whereas like the other games that I had for the Game Boy were like very just pick up and play. The only one that I would say that I had, well, is that fair to say? I don't know. I would say that, Super Mario Land, obviously, you can sit down and sink your teeth into that and have it be more of like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Obviously, you can sit down and play Tetris for a while, but I'm saying that, like, you know, playing something like Super Mario Land is more like an adventure. It's not, you're not playing an arcade-style game. You're playing more of the kind of video game that I wanted back then. And so, like, that game had a lot more kind of going on. It felt more, how about this? It felt more like a home console game than a handheld game. And that was something that I really appreciated about that game. I don't know if I got Gargoyle's Quest before or after Batman. Because again, I don't remember where that game came from, which really drives me crazy because normally I don't have these problems, remembering that stuff. But another interesting aspect about Gargoyle's Quest, I'm sure there are other games we could think of that must be in the same kind of situation, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any. The first Gargoyle's Quest was a Game Boy game. It got a sequel on the NES. So, like, how many game series could we think of that got their start on a handheld and then got a sequel on a home console? Again, I'm sure there must be other examples. But I thought that was pretty cool. The one on the NES is just called Gargoyle's Quest 2. It's okay. I think it's like a little heavier on sort of the RPG half of the game, but it also still has the side scrolling. For some reason, I feel like that game doesn't really control as well. Like, I just feel like the controls in Gargoyle's Quest just feel really good. And then you play Gargoyle's Quest 2 and it's just like, yeah, but it's still a good game. And then the third game in the series, which I never knew about, like, back in the day, but I wasn't a Super Nintendo guy, is Demon's Crest, which is unfortunately a very expensive Super Nintendo game, but, these days we don't need to buy games if we don't want to. And that game is really, really good, but that game is just like side-scrolling only. But I'm not complaining. I think that that's cool. Because again, like with Gargoyle's Quest, like, the fact that it had these like sort of RPG sections of the game, like, overhead map and the random battle encounters that you would get into, it just made the game feel bigger. But like Gargoyle's Quest, you could have just taken all of the side-scrolling sections and just made that the game, and it still would have been a good game. And pretty much that's what Demon's Crest is. Unfortunately, I don't have Demon's Crest, but I have an EverDrive and whatnot, so I don't really need it. But anyway, all three of those games are good, but I would say, like, my favorite is the first one. Second favorite probably is Demon's Crest, and Gargoyle's Quest 2 for the NES, still a good game, but I think it's the weakest of the three. Next game, number 2. So, this is not a game that I had when I was a kid, but this is a game that my best friend Jonathan had. And there were just certain games that I really enjoyed watching him play. Because a lot of what I would, after school, I would always go over to his house. And, we would do homework together. And we'd play, we'd watch like the Disney afternoon cartoons together. Because this was like, late 80s, early 90s. And we would play NES together. But mostly I would watch him play. Like, not because, like, he was being a jerk or because I wasn't allowed, but, he had a lot of single-player games that, like, he was working on, and I was perfectly happy to just sit there and watch him play, because I would say he was a very good video gamer. Like, there was some kind of, like, competition at a local store where, you won, like, a TV and some other stuff, and he won, like, the competition and got the TV. So, I mean, he was very good at video games. But, so I never had this game, but when I got sort of back into the NES, which would have been in like 1996, that's kind of when I had this realization that I could sort of get all the NES games that I wanted when I was younger, but couldn't afford because now nobody wanted them. And I don't remember where I got this game. This might have been a game that I got at Funko Land, or it might have been a game that I traded one of my friends for. But again, I'm sure it's not going to focus, but that is Solomon's Key. And this is one of my absolute favorite NES games. I didn't know this when I was a kid because I never saw one, but Solomon's Key was actually, I should say, it's a Tecmo game. and it was a Tecmo arcade game. And in fact, I remember I don't remember the exact name, but Tecmo released an arcade compilation for the original Xbox, like way back when, and it had the arcade version of Solomon's Key on it. So, but as a kid, I didn't know that there was an arcade version of Solomon's Key. I never saw it. It doesn't really matter. But it's just interesting. It's like the same people that brought you Tecmo Bowl made Solomon's Key. And if you haven't played Solomon's Key, I highly recommend it. I don't really know how to describe the game. It's a side-scrolling platforming puzzle game, maybe. I don't know where I would categorize. I'm not really super into like pigeonholing games, so I'm trying to just describe what the game is like by, giving it a genre or whatever. But basically, the way Solomon's Key works, it's a single screen game, right? So the screen's not scrolling around. It's just like, bam, here's the level on the screen. You are a wizard named Dana, which I always thought that was kind of weird. Like, Dana's a perfectly fine name. I have a friend named Dana. It just seems like a little bit of a vanilla name for a wizard in a video game. Like, you'd think his name would be like Sophocles or something. It's like naming him Charles or something. But anyway, it's a wizard named Dana. And the point of the game is like, you start at point A, you have to find a key, Solomon's Key. You have to find a key. You don't really have to find it. Like, normally you can see the key. You have to figure out how to get the key. And then when you pick up the key, there's like this animation where like it kind of like flies through the air and goes and like hits the door, because then somewhere else in the level is a locked door. That unlocks and opens the door so that you can get out. So, but the trick with the game is figuring out how to get to the key so you can pick it up, and then how to get to the exit, because the levels are like full of bad guys and you have very little offensive firepower. And in fact, when you start the game, you have no offensive firepower. But what you do have, you have a magic wand, and you have the ability to create or delete blocks. So like you wave your wand, a block forms that you can then jump on top of. From there, you can make another block if you need to get up higher. And then any block that you made, you can also get rid of. Or there's certain blocks in the game that you can get rid of. They're like, some of them look more like bricks, and those are permanent. Some of them are blocks that you can remove if you don't need them there. And then those same blocks, you can also get rid of them. If you're underneath them, you can like jump up and hit your head on them and break them. But you can also pick up fireballs, but it's just like one fireball. And there's like a little scroll at the top of the screen that shows your fireballs. And there's two kinds of fireball. There's a fireball that will just hit one enemy, and then the enemy is dead, but your fireball's gone. And then there's more of like a super fireball where it'll plow through enemies until it like hits a wall or whatever and then disappears. But that's really that's your main offensive firepower, but you don't get very many fireballs, so you have to use them very strategically. So it's kind of that's why I say it's like a puzzle game, is there's sort of a way to solve every level. I mean, there's probably more than one way to solve it, but I'm saying you have to figure out how to solve each level. The other way you can get rid of some enemies, if they're standing on a block and you destroy the block, they'll fall to their death. So you can also do that. But like, there's some enemies that don't work that way. Like there's these little things, they kind of look like fireballs, that they just like go around blocks, or they go around blocks of blocks. And because of the way they move, you can't destroy a block and have them like fall off. So, and in fact, some of the levels have like a ton of those things. And so like the whole thing is like, when the level starts, there's a timer, but you can just hit pause. Is you can kind of look at the level and try to figure out what your strategy is going to be. Okay, there's the key. How am I going to get to the key without dying? And then I have to figure out how to go get to the exit. But there's also treasure that you can pick up. So if you're playing the game for points, you don't want to just get the key and get to the exit, because you're leaving all those points behind. And there are also fairies that you can save. So there's these little bells, like the level will just have a bell somewhere. And if you pick up the bell, a fairy will appear, but not next to you, like more kind of like near the exit usually. And then if you go pick up the fairy, then like there's on the top of the screen, there's a thing that says fairies and has a number. And I think it's every 10 fairies you get an extra life. If I remember correctly, that may be wrong, but it's something like that. My point is just that it's not as easy as just getting from point A to point B. You can do that, but if you're really trying to get the most out of the game, you want to like pick up all the treasures and you want to try to get all the fairies, blah, blah, blah. But the game's really fun. The controls are really good. Oh, you have to press up to jump. So that's like, it's more of like a Commodore Amiga sort of thing. I've never played the arcade version. I guess I've played it at home, but I don't remember. But I've never seen the arcade cab. So I don't know if it was a 3-button game in the arcade so that it had a jump button. But on the NES, you have to press up. But I think you get used to it pretty fast. But, it's because the A and B buttons get used for, your wand to do the brick thing and for the fireballs. To be honest, it seems like they could have like mapped fireballs to select, because you don't really use the fireballs that often, but whatever. It really doesn't matter. But the game's got really nice presentation. It's got good graphics. I really like the music a lot. Obviously, the music's a little bit repetitive, but just overall, I don't know. Does it make sense if I say the game is engaging, like has engaging presentation? Maybe not. I don't know. It has really nice sound effects, cool sound effects, nice music, good graphics, and it's just a heck of a lot of fun. And I think it uses a password system. So if you die, get game over, you can go back to whatever level you were on. So that's nice too. So anyway, that is Solomon's Key, one of my favorite NES games. And like I said, one of the first games that I sought out when I got back into the NES. So the last game we're going to talk about today, it's kind of funny. This, I'm not making hidden gems videos here, but I feel like if today's show has a theme, it's like these are 3 games that I personally don't really ever hear people talking about. And that's not always going to be the case if I keep making videos like these. It's just these are the 3 games that I picked. So the third game, I've talked about this situation. It's not really a situation, but I think I told the story in a magazine read-through because one of the games was Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, which is the first Oddworld. And I mentioned that I had this buddy, Rafe. And Rafe lived like way over on the other side of town. And the city where I grew up, our public transportation system really sucked. And so for him to get from his house to my house might have taken him like 2 hours or more. So, like, I remember one time he came over, because this is like when we were in college. That's how we met. Like, we became buddies at community college. But, like, he ended up coming in and spending the night at my house just because that's how much of a pain it was to get from his house to my house. Like, if it's 2 hours each way, then, whatever. He didn't have a car. I didn't have a car. So, but anyway, he brought a few PlayStation games with him. And one of them was Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. Another one was Legacy of Kain Blood Omen, which is interesting because I feel like anytime I see reviews of that game, of Blood Omen, it doesn't get very good reviews, but I remember I thought that game was pretty cool. I haven't really played that game enough that I have like a real strong opinion about it. But the third game that I remember him bringing over is Intelligent Cube. And I don't know when this game came out. I want to say 96. No, it says 97 on here. 1997. And he brought this game over. And to be very honest, this is the kind of game where if it's something that I would have rented on my own, I probably would have played it for a few minutes and then just decided, like, I don't think this game is really for me. But, he brought it over and, like, he explained the game to me and taught me how to play it so that I could really appreciate, what it was and whatnot. And I think that made all the difference. So kind of, again, I'd have to say, not really in the same vein as Solomon's Key, but Intelligent Cube is very much an action puzzle game. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of Clax. Like, I wonder if the guys that made this game, apparently the guy that designed this game, I don't remember his name, but apparently he's like a university professor or something in Japan. Maybe the guy was a Clax fan. I don't really know. But the way the game works, like there's this big, it's even called a stage. It's this big stage that's like floating in just sort of nothingness. And the stage is made out of cubes. And you're literally like a little man. Like, you know, he's a guy wearing like, you know, a white shirt and some slacks and some shoes. And you're running around. So it's kind of ridiculous because I'm playing the game. I'm like, well, how did this guy like get here? Like this all seems kind of like, why is it a little dude? But it's part of like the game's charm. Like I'm not complaining. But anyway, so you're on this big stage. It's made up of all these cubes. And there's like another layer of cubes that's like eye level with your little dude. And when the game starts, these cubes start like in unison rolling towards you. Like they you know, flip from one edge to the next edge, like boom, boom. And there's 3 different colors for the cubes. I think there's black cubes, and those are the forbidden cubes. There's just the regular gray cubes, and then there's green cubes. And so you're running around in the stage, and you know, basically what's underneath your feet are like squares, because it's like the faces of the cubes that make up the stage. And kind of like a disco floor, you can light up squares that are underneath your feet. And I think the game calls it activating the squares. I'm not really sure. But basically what you're trying to do, you're trying to get rid of all of the gray cubes and the green cubes, but not touch the black cubes. To be honest, the gameplay of this game is complicated enough that it has like a whole tutorial mode at the beginning where it teaches you how to play the game. So I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining it, but it's a really fun game. So you're standing on a square, you press a button to like, you know, light up the square, and then when one of these cubes that's rolling towards you hits the square, so it's sitting on it, you hit the button again and it will delete that cube. If it's a gray cube. If it's a green cube, it will delete that cube but then light up the 8 squares that are adjacent to that square. And so then you can hit the button again, or maybe it's hit a different button, and then all of those will also get deleted. But if you accidentally delete one of the black cubes, then you get like penalized. And I mean, that probably doesn't make the game sound very cool, but you just gotta trust me, like the game is very, very cool. And the game has this very cinematic presentation. Like when the game is starting, like it feels like you're getting ready to like watch a movie. And even once you start playing the game, it has like this orchestral soundtrack, and there's like this narrator voice, like this really deep voice. And it's funny, that's like what my wife knows the game for. You know, if you so for each wave of cubes in a given level, like a bunch of cubes start rolling towards you, you eliminate all the cubes, and then like this narrator voice just goes, perfect. And like my wife, like if I picked this game up and showed it to her, that's what she would say, because that's what she remembers from the game is perfect. But so once you delete all those cubes, then like a whole nother layer like lifts up out of the stage. It looks really cool. But like if you perfectly complete one wave of cubes, then your stage gets extended by like one row of cubes, so you have a little bit more room to work with, because you can also get penalized by having the stage shortened. And then, you know, because you only have, you know, those cubes are rolling at you, so they're only going to roll so many times before they get to the end, so you really have a certain number of rolls in which to delete all the cubes you're supposed to delete. So there's like some pressure involved. Oh, and you can, like, if you fall off the stage, you can get run over by the cubes, but you can also fall off the stage. Like if you're standing towards the end and you get penalized so that the last row, you know, falls off, you fall off with it. And like I said, it's like this, the whole game is like taking place in like this abyss. you'll fall down into the abyss, and your little guy's just going like, whoa, and like the camera's like following him down. It's kind of dark, but I mean, this game is just so cool. And I mean, they didn't really release anything else like this here. Even back then, like this, so this game came out, I'm sure it was $50, and it kind of stayed $50. Like even for a used copy, like I remember once I got an eBay account, I remember like I would look on eBay for it, and it was like still an expensive game. I ended up getting really lucky, and I went into a Blockbuster Video in like, I don't know, 1999 or something, and they had like an end cap with, you know, previously played games, and I got a copy. This is a different copy, but I got it for like $5. But one thing I wanted to mention about Intelligent Cube, just a second, I have to get it out of the closet over here. I wasn't prepared. So this didn't come out here, unfortunately, but in Japan, they released, I should say, in Japan, there was a sequel. We didn't get it here. That's what I'm saying. Like, nothing else like this came out here. But in Japan, it got a sequel, and then later on the PSP, they released this game, IQ Mania, which is like the two games put together. So, like, if you were going to play one version of Intelligent Cube, really, this is the version that you would want. So, like, especially if you have like a PS TV or a PS Vita that you've like jailbroken or whatever, you know, get the ISO or whatever for IQ Mania and play it this way. I ended up getting this copy because for a while, Fry's Electronics, which I think is just a West Coast thing, for whatever reason, they would have import PSP games in there. And so I got, you know, there was like a Gradius collection that came out, and then I got IQ Mania for, I don't know, like $20 or something. So good deal. But I strongly recommend you check out, well, all three of these games, quite frankly. So that's it. So that's my idea for a new show format here on CGQ Plus. I don't have a good idea for a name. No. Ladybird's trying to go in the closet. If anybody has any ideas, like, I'm all ears. So, or I'll think of something. But let me know what you think. It's pretty easy for me to go over to the shelf and pick out 3 games and just sort of organize my thoughts on them, and we can go from there. So that's going to do it for this episode of CGQ Plus. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.